Next, we'll dive into an important conversation on global preparedness and response. The panel discussion is titled Building Global Resilience, Advancing Regional Preparedness and Continuity through NFPA 1660. Please welcome our moderator, Mr. Kenneth Burson, International Senior Liaison, Government Networks at NFPA, and he will be joined by our panelists, Ms. Dana Kamal, Director, International Business Development for Middle East, North Africa at NFPA, Dr. Aissam Bouadjel, Head of Health, Safety and Environment and Operational Excellence at Fujairah Oil Industry Zone, Mr. Faisal Maazami, Director, Protective Service Department at Shakhbout Medical City, and Major Rashid Shaya, Head of UAE USAR team with Abu Dhabi Civil Defense Authority.
Today we're going to be focusing on NFPA 1660, which is the standard for emergency management, continuity, and crisis management. It serves as a unifying international framework to build organizational and national resilience. Our panel features distinguished experts from around the world who bring unique regional and sector-specific insights. NFPA 1660 is the result of a strategic effort by the National Fire Protection Association to bring clarity and cohesion to preparedness and response standards. It was developed through the Emergency Response and Responder Safety Consolidation process, what we call the ERRS initiative, which aimed to streamline and unify guidance for emergency operations. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our technical session that's entitled Building Global Resilience, Advancing Regional Preparedness and Continuity through NFPA 1660. My name is Kenneth Burson with the National Fire Protection Association, and I will serve as the moderator for this very esteemed panel of professionals that were selected for their particular expertise in their industries and job roles. NFPA 1660 provides many resources and self-assessment checklists for organizations and individuals to use. As previously discussed, 3 other standalone standards, NFPA 1600 on emergency and continuity management, NFPA 1660 on mass evacuation and sheltering, and NFPA 1620 on pre-incident planning were consolidated into this one comprehensive standard. The goal was to reduce overlap, to ensure consistency, and to provide a clearer and more efficient roadmap for organizations facing all types of hazards. Additionally, NFPA 1660 is aligned with the Homeland Security Evaluation Program known as HSEEP in providing guidance on types of exercises used by organizations to test and evaluate emergency operational readiness. This is just a brief example of a fact sheet that NFPA produced to help people understand these exercise formats in support of the NFPA 1660 program evaluations. And now, with the background of the discussion established, it is my honor to introduce our very esteemed panelists. Major Dr. Rashid Shaya with the Abu Dhabi Civil Defense Authority currently serves as the head of the UAE USAR team as the Section Command Support Group Leader. The UAE Urban Search and Rescue Team is recognized by the Urban Search and Rescue Advisory Group, INSARAG, and certified as a heavy rescue classification team and was the first INSARAG recognized team in the MENA region. He's participated in recent rescue operations in Turkey, Syria, Libya, Morocco, Myanmar, Albania, and Afghanistan. Engineer Dana Kamal, a healthcare engineering expert and professional with over 22 years of experience in the healthcare business development, projects, facilities, and education across several work streams, implementing new strategies with existing and new stakeholders, and currently serves as NFPA Director of International Development in MENA to cover regulatory, legislative, and technical circles and others, working closely with multiple sectors to champion building, life safety, and fire protection standards and promote effective code compliance in the built environment. Dana managed and achieved the establishment of the first NFPA International Regional Office in MENA. Dana proudly was recently nominated as a winner among Global 200 Women Power Leaders in 2025 and Healthcare Engineering and Fire and Life Safety Industries. Mr. Faisal Al-Maazami is a seasoned security, disaster management, and operations leader with over 20 years of experience in both government and healthcare sectors. He began his career at Dubai International Airport, where he served in departments such as Criminal Investigation and Operations Control. And in 2011, he joined Cleveland Clinic, Abu Dhabi, and later in 2021, he joined Sheikh Shakhbout Medical City. In both roles, established and led the Protective Services Department. As the director, he oversees emergency management, business continuity, security, and transportation services to support the hospital's mission of becoming a world-class medical destination. Additionally, Faisal established with a team of professionals the Readiness and Continuity Committee at the SSMC. Dr. Aissam Bouadjel currently serves as the head of Health, Safety, Environmental, and Operational Excellence for the Fujairah Oil Industry Zone, otherwise known as FOIZ. Dr. Aissam has over 20 years of experience in the energy sector and has deep expertise in energy management, sustainability, operational risk, and innovative technology solutions that drive efficiency and decarbonization. In his current role, he leads energy regulatory initiatives, safety programs, and digital transformation efforts across terminal operations, and his work focuses on embedding sustainability, resilience, and excellence into the region's energy infrastructure. Again, my name is Kenneth Burson, and I serve as the International Senior Liaison of Government Networks for the National Fire Protection Association. My role with the NFPA is the primary point of contact for emergency response needs as part of the Global Partnership Program, working closely with emergency responders, emergency managers, government policymakers to identify training needs around the globe. It's truly an honor to moderate a panel discussion amongst such esteemed fire and life safety professionals and to participate in a 2025 CBIC conference powered by CIBCA and Mr. Ibrahim Lari. With the introductions now complete, let's jump right into the questions. For Major Rashid, the question is in regard to operational integration in high-risk environments. In regions where emergency response must account for complex urban dynamics and critical infrastructure, how has your organization leveraged NFPA 1660 to unify response coordination across agencies and sectors?
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for this great introduction. I really appreciate it. In response to your question, NFPA 1660 is the guideline that enlightened organization on how to come together to operate within 6 major tasks. Task number 1, which is how to be prepared for the emergency. Going through task number 2, which is how to respond to it, how to coordinate while conducting an operation, and then the stages come where help with the evacuation, the recovery stage, and the maintaining of the operation itself. In 2003, under His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed orders, the UAE search and rescue team was ordered to dispatch to Turkey and Syria for the earthquake at the same time. So basically the team was dispatched to 2 different geographical locations at the same time. And it happened again also in 2023 where we also dispatched to Morocco and Libya for the earthquake and the floods. The challenge was that the United Arab Emirates Search and Rescue Team is a certified team from INSORAG, which is an agency under the United Nations where most countries have teams that are certified there. We are a heavy certified team where we have the capability to actually work in 2 different geographical locations at the same time with full sustainability. The way that we communicate with each other was under the INSORAG guidelines, but when NFPA 1660 came in, we had a bigger umbrella of chain of command, both internationally and nationally here in the UAE. As when we dispatched, it's not just the civil defense, it was other agencies from the UAE itself. Going back to that example, we came together to find similar language. It paved the way for us to coordinate together, as we said, and to reach our operational objective, which is the recovery result for operations. Thank you.
Thank you, Major. The next question is for Engineer Dana Kamal on the topic of cross-sector adoption and regional alignment. As you continue to engage with stakeholders across the MENA region, what are the most significant drivers and barriers to cross-sector adoption of NFPA 1660, and how are governments and non-government organizations responding?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Thank you, Ken, and thank you. It's really a pleasure to be here again with you today at SAIBC 2025. I had always a vision speaking to the chairman, Mr. Ibrahim Lari, saying that SAIBC is not really an Abu Dhabi event. It's actually a message from Abu Dhabi to the world. And today we witness this by saying that. Thank you. Thank you. And indeed, we witness that by seeing how much of, as always Lubna says, our partners, our families, our friends, everyone who cares about the mission of smart solutions, fire life safety, emergency preparedness, resilience, and all what does it take to cope with the new technology and innovation comes here to SAIBC and share their mission. Thank you for the introduction, and thank you for having me part of this panel. Let me just start by saying that at NFPA, we believe that preparedness and resilience do not come by accident, and they do not come by chance. They are part of leadership, investment, and commitment to a shared responsibility. Look at us today being at SAIBC, speaking about smart solutions, Internet of Things, AI innovations, and yet this panel is held intentionally speaking about emergency preparedness, because emergency preparedness and business continuity remains the foundation for any successful business and establishment. On another role, any advancement you have in smart solutions and smart business, you need to ensure that you have the equivalent advancement when it comes to your people, to your HR systems, to your preparedness, risk mitigation, and so on and so forth. So here comes our NFPA fire and life safety system and say, it's not only the code, it's not only the technology, it's not only the investment of safety, it's not only the emergency preparedness, it is a shared responsibility for everyone. Now, looking at my role as a director for the MENA region and how things evolve around the 1660, I look at how government I would say 1660 is becoming really a strategic priority. And I would say that the 1660 is gaining traction, being a tool that really unify the solution around different sectors, from government responsibilities, from government sector, as Major Rashid has mentioned, who really is keen on developing the current codes and standards and complying with them, from the private sector, who really is keen also on the risk mitigation and the more on the ESG model and their solution to integrate with the government requirements, and similarly on the NGO side, who's really more connected to the public and would say that they wanted to work on public education, public awareness, keep the public informed, and I would say this is happening heavily in the GCC area. Maybe our role as NFPA is to ensure that these efforts are not fragmented, these efforts speak together, these efforts have a unified language under the code, and maybe we work together to say that here is the 1660 as your playbook, I would say. Here is the code, here is the requirements as emergency response, business continuity, and incident command, and so on. And at the same time, we work with our NFPA fire and life safety ecosystem to work under the responsibility of each sector. That was my answer. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Dana. The next question is for Director Faisal, and on the subject of continuity planning in national security contexts. So from your leadership perspective, what challenges arise when aligning NFPA 1660's continuity and recovery guidance with national security protocols, and how can public safety organizations bridge these gaps effectively?
Thank you, Ken, for the introduction. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, ladies and gentlemen, esteemed guests. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I think I would take the lead of Dana's introduction and really start by gratitude and say thanks for every single person behind the CIBEC event. Thank you, Mr. Ibrahim Lari, for bringing forward the voice of Abu Dhabi and the fire life safety culture out to the world. So thank you, Dana. I think that's well said from your side. With that, in terms of answering the question, I'll try to break it into different zones. But I think to start with, the NFPA 1660 really did a great job by putting three standards together under one umbrella. I think that's the first thing, the first powerful thing that is done under this document or this standard, putting 1600, 1616, and 1620 under one place, and giving what Engineer Dana just said, a playbook for organization to take emergency preparedness to a next level. In terms of the main challenges between an example of the local regulation or some of the local standards or even international standard versus NFPA 1660 is that both serve a need for an establishment. However, they have different priority domains. For me, the way I look at 1660, although it's not fully implemented in our facility yet, it is more inclusive. It's based on community risk versus a national security standard could compartmentalize the risk into targeted strategic risk based on the intelligence, based on the given priorities for that specific sector, whether it's a UAE or any other country or any other city per se. So the priorities are different between probably a security national standard versus an FPA 1660. So the culture of the priority is completely different, right? The second thing, while NFPA 1660 gives you a playbook to have a community risk-based approach, an all-inclusiveness type of approach for your preparedness, for your risk assessment, for your EOP, the emergency operating planning, while if we specifically pick on the security, a security national protocol, it would be target, as I said earlier, target a specific risk, and it keeps on changing. It's very dynamic. Now, both are very strong in one way of looking at it, but they speak a little bit differently based on their priorities. How to bridge the gap is what we call a nightmare for us as staff in an organization. And some of my colleagues probably who write documentation and policy would kind of echo what I would say. So we really try to be very flexible into developing documentation or policies or procedure or response plan that really meets different standards. So we are obliged to comply with the national standard, with the local city standard per se, but also we have our own aspiration, right? So we would like to also follow a best standard from a specific region. In our case, in 1660, it makes it easier to really integrate both, or like to bridge the gap, is by doing what I call a nightmare, is that you probably have at times do a dual documentation, you try to combine or tailor your document to capture both standards priorities at the same time. The other way of bridging the gap is really working with the national stakeholders and bridging the gap between the 1660 and the regulatory bodies here by creating, for example, a joint exercise, joint drills, joint tabletops that kind of bring the language and streamline the priorities together. So bringing the best out of NFPA 1660 and the local standards and putting them together and molding that into a practical kind of outcome. Last but not least, now that I'm drawing into my head, I think identifying your early approach to what I call a holistic risk assessment based versus strategic targeted risk assessment based. The holistic one would be the NFPA 1660 versus the targeted would be the national, for example, standards, and trying to let them work together and bringing that up to your local regulatory bodies. So when you're working with them, while the local regulatory bodies wants you to focus at a very specific set of risk, you need to make sure that you have the holistic approach as well. Because in the end of the day, there are definitely what are considered as a concern today from an emerging risk versus what I need to have as a holistic approach, because in the end of the day, I have a hospital to run and I want to make sure I'm ready and my preparedness plan is ready and my execution and resources are built to respond to any type of situation, not just a targeted risk. I hope that answers the question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next question is for Dr. Aissam on the topic of technology and public communication resilience. The question is, given the increased reliance on digital communication during crisis, how can NFPA 1660 guide the development of resilient public information strategies that withstand misinformation and cyber threats in smart cities?
So thank you very much. Sorry.
And I apologize also. Please also relate this in your individual sector, in the petrochemical sector as well.
Thank you very much, Ken, and thank you very much for the organizers for all the hard work they put in over the last probably few months, maybe more than that, to get all of us together and discuss these important topics that matters all to us. So regarding your question, I would like to capitalize a little bit on what my colleagues have just said. And I look at the NFPA 1660 not just like in the context of emergency response, because I look at it as risk management standards, because it covers the piece of the prevention, which is to me the most important, because I see it like the most effective response way or emergency response way basically is your prevention. So when the NFPA 1660 provide a risk-based approach or risk-based framework for all the organizations, it doesn't matter if you put it in the context of smart cities or high-risk industries such as oil and gas. So this framework basically is built on 5 steps that they go in sequence. The first one is identifying basically the hazards or the threats that can impact your business. Then it goes to risk assessment and impact analysis, to controls and mitigation, and your preparedness, response, and recovery or continuity. So when we talk about cybersecurity, and I think it was the hot topic for these events, and I've seen Dr. Roger this morning in the presentation about NFPA 72 and presentation that came after that, all basically touched base on this. It's a hazard, it's an emergent risk that needs to be treated using the same process. And it should not be different than understanding, assessing your risk. Then based on that, you put your control measures, mitigations, and what do you do if something goes wrong. So when we talk about, we put it on in the context of cybersecurity, especially probably in the smart cities. Things are advancing, but if I put it in the context of the energy sector or the oil and gas industry, where we heavily rely on digitalized systems to protect the people, the facilities, and when we assess the risk, basically we consider safeguard and engineering control that basically with no human intervention. So if this digitalized system gets attacked, so basically we're exposed to major disasters such as fires, explosions, and environmental spills or attacks. So to me, from my perspective, the cybersecurity is a risk that has to be treated as any other risk. So when it comes to communication, we often talk about communication during the incident. But to me, the most important than that is the communication that happened before the incident. Because now, especially when we talk about, we put it in the context of high-risk industry, but I think it applies to any other industry, is if you want people to respond properly, they need to be aware what to do. They need to understand the protocol. They need to understand the terminology. They need to understand the expectations and the hazards around them. And if you look at the CSP investigations about toxic gas releases, most of them is that the community didn't know that there was toxic gas. There was a hazard just close by. So that's why it's very important that engagement with the community, the awareness is the most important step in communication. When it comes during the incident, it's very important, especially these days in social media, your communication has to be on time, has to be clear, and has to be an action driven. Basically, you're telling people what to do. The third step is post-incident, because if an incident happened, yes, okay, we did a great job, we controlled the incident, but we need to communicate to our community or stakeholders what happened, why it happened, and how we're gonna work together all to prevent it in the future. So the challenge these days is when it comes to cybersecurity, is our channels of communication that we use to communicate with our community, they might be attacked. And we will end up in a situation, in emergency situation, where our existing tools, the tools that they are available to us, are not working. So that's why it comes back to the risk management process and how you make sure that you have proper controls in place if the system is not, if your existing tool is not working, what is your backup? So the thing is a summary especially for high-risk business, what we do, and I can speak to Fujairah, we have a communication protocol that identify all the stakeholders and the type of the communication, the one and how it goes. And in case we have a failure of, let's say, if the communication, and we experienced that during the flood in 2022. So if the communication, the standard or the conventional communication system is working, then what is your backup? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Aissam. So just in the interest of time, to try to stay on schedule, I'll ask the panelists please to keep the round of questions as brief as possible. The next question is back to Major Rashid, that in light of recent regional flood and climate-related events, how has NFPA 1660 been used to prepare for cascading infrastructure failures, and what lessons were learned from these activations?
Thank you again, Kenneth. Again, NFPA 1660 is the way and the language, the common language that agencies communicate through. The main question that it introduced, especially when it comes to the flood situations and crisis, is once an infrastructure or something is down, what does it take down with? And how can we operate and recover from that? The examples that come into mind is the floods that happened in the Emirate of Fujairah in 2022, and what also happened in the Emirate of Dubai in 2024. We noticed, and what we learned from that situations is that at the beginning, when we first dispatched to Fujairah, each agency had its own chain of command, and the language wasn't, let's say, common between us and other agencies, either military agencies, governmental agencies, and so on. Alhamdulillah, the operation went well. We recovered from it, and the maintaining of the operations as well kept going in a smooth way, but it's not the way that was drawn under the umbrella of NFPA 1660. Moving forward, what happened in Dubai, we noticed a very big difference between the what happened in Fujairah and what happened in Dubai, where there was more synchronization, there was more a clear chain of command, better way to communicate. This all came also because of what happened pre the situation. There was more training, more exercises, and more workshops that all agencies who had to handle situations as such went through and did as well. That is to keep the answer as short as possible, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Major. And back to Dr. Aissam on the topic of capacity building and scalability. How can NFPA 1660 be effectively scaled in resource-constrained municipalities or local government, particularly where technical capacity and funding are limited?
Yeah, it's a good question. Actually, there is no organization that has unlimited budget. So we talk about either the budget is limited or the organization wants to take efficiency to the next level because nobody wants to spend money where unnecessary. So to answer the short question to that is basically it's resources sharing and pooling. In a simple, like the difficult part of it, it's not an easy thing that you can do because it requires a lot of commitment, a lot of hard works and efforts to ensure alignment between the organizations in terms of understanding the risk, in terms of ranking the risk, in terms of developing the credible scenarios, and also based on that you build or you identify your needs and put your investments. So the thing that I always advise organizations is like the low-hanging fruit is investing in your personnel. Is the training that you give your personnel to prevent the incidents before it happened, to prevent the incidents from happening, and also to train your people to respond probably if something goes wrong. That's, to me, it's the low-hanging fruit. When it comes to investment, we have great success stories in Fujairah. We entered in partnership in 2019 with ADNOC and Jahiziyah. We put all the equipment, fire stations together from both sides, ADNOC and FOIZ, my organization, and we hired the third party, which is Jahiziyah, to bring the expertise and manage the resources efficiently. And it's something that we're looking to expand probably to bring more stakeholders into the partnership in the future.
Thank you, Doctor. And finally, back to Director Faisal. In your view, how does NFPA 1660 enhance the strategic resilience planning beyond merely compliance, and what differentiates it from other continuity frameworks that's used in the region's public and private sectors?
Very good question, Ken. I will try to be as short as possible. I think the horizon are very further out in terms of drawing comparison. But I can start with saying from differences, both sides of the coin are very strong. They build a very strong foundation for any organization. So if I would pick on one standard, for example, ISO 23001, which we have, These type of standards or other standards are very document-centric, and they help foundation or establishment or organization to really have a very strong documentation process, building very strong policies, being capable of a strong auditability, I would say. While the NFPA on the other side of the coin really has a complete, I feel it has a complete different approach to it. It's not just documentation and documentation-centric type of thing. It's more of an operational depth. It gives you it really highlights how you can have an inclusive, as I said earlier, hazard risk assessment or community risk assessment, build the preparedness, the resources, the capabilities in order to respond. So it's more of an operational depth, operational execution. Those are the main contrasts for me. Now, both do complement each other. What was probably missing in any standard is really the operational depth approach to emergency management or business continuity in general. A lot of standards will encourage you to do your BIA, whether it's your local standards or others, do your business impact analysis, do this, do that, name things out, put your targets, recovery time or recovery objective time, etc. But really, sometimes it's just really document on a shelf. You just bring it out and make sure you pass the audit at the end of the day. The NFPA 1660 is more comprehensive, inclusive. It has a different approach to it. You actually can take it, and now, if you had a philosophy or culture in your organization where you take emergency management and business continuity beyond just a regular standard, and you take it to a point where you aspire to be very resilient to any type of crisis by demonstrating a lot of drills, doing a lot of investing in a lot of training and a lot of cross-sector or stakeholder engagement type of exercise, working with regulatory bodies where you can influence things to be better, and setting a best practice in general within your sector of industry, right? So I'm speaking of healthcare, for example. So the NFPA now justifies our approach or our philosophy. While we didn't have probably a document in the past that kind of delivered to leadership or non-emergency related experts or professional, what are we trying to do in the end of the day? So I hope that answers the question.
Thank you very much. And the final question, certainly not last but not least, goes to Dana. On the topic of public preparedness and community engagement, what innovative public education and engagement strategies aligned with NFPA 1660 have proven successful in raising preparedness awareness across diverse populations, and how is impact being measured?
Thank you, Ken, and thanks for the panel as well for their contribution. When looking at public education and public awareness from the 1660 focal lens, I would say you need really to be aware of the community scale in terms of the community language, community culture, community behavior, in order to say that I have a successful community awareness efforts. That's one thing. Another thing, before we get into the activities themselves, how do you measure these efforts is by really you don't measure it by really how much a message was spread, or it's not really quantitative, rather than you want to ensure how much behavior it did change, how much active engagement you had. So some examples here in I would say in Abu Dhabi and in the region in general, can be drill activities where really per industry, I would say, and even with the public, where really these exercises and drills comes very much public focused. They focus on if we are talking about schools, if we are talking about kids areas, if we are talking about residential, if we are talking about academia, different areas and in different focus groups can be targeted within these drills with different scenarios. But what's important in these drills is not only the scenario, but the post-drill critique and what happens actually in terms of the finding. How do we challenge ourselves in terms of the scenario that we put? Because if we keep saying that everything is perfect, we live in a perfect world, then we are fooling ourselves. Perhaps other area of focus when it comes to the public engagement is using technology. We live in a world of smart solutions. We can target them through apps, messages, awareness campaigns. And this happens a lot. We have witnessed through our partners in Abu Dhabi Civil Defense, in Dubai Civil Defense, and throughout the Emirates, how technology is heavily involved when it comes to raising awareness through a fire emergency response and others. So I would say no matter what the effort is there, we need to do it right. We need to do it with passion. And as we say in NFPA, it is a big world. Let's protect it together. Thank you.
And that's a really great way to end it. So thank you all for attending this session about a very important topic, the NFPA 1660 standard, and how it applies to nearly every kind of organization around the world. From governments to NGOs, private organizations, and even small family-owned businesses, the 1660 standards helps to provide guidance, framework, tools, and checklists to ensure that you're prepared to maintain business continuity operations before the disaster strikes. On behalf of my colleagues on the panel and for NFPA, thank you once more to the administrators of CYBIC 2025. Thank you.